Well,
So
we weren't too far into it, so I guess I'll start over. But yeah, I was
yeah,
saying we were just talking about price, and you just mentioned how it's looking just holding up strong. And I was mentioning that on Saturday I was watching your stream, and you made a comment that pretty much every little dip that we're getting. I mean, some dips are bigger than others. On the daily, 4 hour, whatever, they're just getting soaked up.
and that's kind of the way I see it. And the good thing is that the hires tend to be higher. I mean, the new highs tend to be higher than the previous ones when they do wick back up, which seems to be a good trend, especially going into big payday. I would expect that behavior is going to continue because of the big payday event itself. And then, you know, it's anybody's guess. I think after big payday is where there's a lot of uncertainty. My speculation on it would just be that with that much liquid hex coming into the pool, you're going to see a small percentage sell off. I believe the majority of the people that are waiting for that are just giving themselves options because, if it's liquid, they could restake it. Anybody who's been in hex or understands hex knows it's really about the value of shares and not trying to game the system and play with price points. So some people are just going to follow the herd. I mean, if some whale or somebody with a big bag dumps, I mean, it's probably going to happen, more than one time. Some people are just going to follow them, but then they'll try to get back in when things wick back up, because unlike other projects in crypto, this one's complete. And some people seem to be short-sighted on that and fail to understand that, this isn't a promise coin. This isn't one of those peaks in the, in the roadmap where something goes wrong and then everybody bails and disperses and runs away. This is a long-term project, and I would anticipate that there'll be quite a bit of volatility. We may even have some big wicks down. I mean, I wouldn't be too shocked. It's just human behavior. But many of us that understand the value of the project will wick it back up or scoop it back up. Plus, the other thing is, with the adoption amplifier closing, all of that inflation is gone, and you really just have what's in right now, primarily the Uniswap liquidity pool. Which, if you watched Richard's live stream, I imagine you probably did this afternoon. We touched again on the vanity of market cap and how a smaller liquidity pool is better for pumping the price, which in this case makes perfect sense. So while you may have to ride some wicks down, we've already done that. I mean, we've already seen a lot of wicks down. Somebody you can, with Hex.live and all the great tools that Steph and Firebun have built, you can see a lot of times where there's just a flurry of emergency unstakes for whatever reason. People will go and dump, but then a lot of those people try to get back in, or others will see the price dip. I mean, I've done it myself. I see a price dip like that, I'll see it as a buying opportunity. And I believe most of us in the space will recognize that. Plus, here's the other thing. I mean, this is a micro sector, and this is a project that's been, I mean, crypto in itself, right, as a whole in the sphere has a very small market cap compared to traditional finance. I talked in my live stream about that before. You've got companies like Apple and Amazon and Disney and others with market caps that well surpass the entire crypto space. So there's a lot of room to grow, I think, in the space as a whole. But then with Hex, because it's been so stifled through the entire launch phase, probably well beyond, I think, what anybody would have expected even. I mean, I think there's always some expectations of resistance when it comes to launching a project, but I was a bit surprised. I expected this to be embraced a little bit more than it was. Not the level of hate and spite that's come out, which and again, a lot of that I believe was directed, and we've all seen primarily personally at Richard. I really haven't seen one person. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I totally agree with you there.
Yeah, I mean, I really haven't seen one person, and I'm an objective guy. I'm a rational guy, and I'm a realist. So if somebody was to come up with a real case against Hex that made sense, I would listen. But so far, it's all been about, they just seem they don't like Richard's personality. They are maybe jealous of his success, or maybe he called them stupid in a live stream or whatever. And I mean, David Hay, I mentioned him. He's a perfect example. He's a guy who in 2017 did a lot of deep dives on tokens. He was a big promoter of Salt. He was a big promoter of Ripple. He was a big promoter of Ethereum, even when Ethereum wasn't as popular. But he did a lot of thorough analysis, not just a bunch of moon boy, soy boy kind of gimmicks. I mean, he actually did some thorough research. So when it came to Hex, and I actually saw his review posted on YouTube, I was a little bit excited. I'm like, oh, hey, finally somebody who might be objective about this project and give us a thorough analysis. And then right out of the gate, he just starts swinging at Richard. He's like, Richard's this gruff, disgruntled guy, and he treats people really poorly, and I'd never want to talk to him. And I'm like, come on, man. I'm like, really? This is the best case you can make against this project? And throughout the video was just, more and more of the same. So I haven't seen. But here's the thing about YouTubers, and maybe in Hex, we have the strongest community I've ever seen in crypto. Now, my history is only since 2017, and one thing I was thinking is if we apply some of the logic of the old Cisco systems back in the .com boom, their motto was like, well, if it's not a standard, we'll make it a standard. And maybe in Hex and with some of the talent that we've seen, we can become the new YouTubers. We can become the new coin market cap. I mean, we have the capability, we have the talent and the ability, I think, to surpass a lot of these guys, because really, who are they? There's no crypto expert. There's no crypto authority. This isn't like, Joe Kernan and Steve Leisman on CNBC with these economics degrees and world years of experience in a regulated space. I mean, this is really anybody's game. So while there's people that's been in it for a while, like Ivan on Tech and some of the others, there's really nobody who's the icon. I mean, Richard's probably the closest we have to a crypto authority, but I think he'd be the first one to tell you, this really just, like Richard's saying here, we route around the gatekeepers. That's right. I mean, it's just that simple. We make it our brand. We make our presence known. We become the new leaders. We emerge. We've got guys like Hexologist. I really believe that, he is the face. He is the right guy for crypto as a whole. He's maybe isn't a.
I think he's a great balance.
He really is. He really is. Yeah. So I see a lot of potential. I mean, this is just something that. And by the way, I mentioned too in my live stream that I don't think Hex even starts until after Big Payday, because Big Payday, it's a great event. We're all looking forward to it, but it's almost a distraction from the big picture of the project.
Yep.
Because the shares, and I did do that video. I don't know if you had a chance to watch it on the spreadsheet with calculating the share price.
I watched it a couple times. I watched it a couple times because I don't know. The first time it just seemed like fantasy math, and then the second time I understood it way better. But it still seems like fantasy math. But it's those longer, years out, and man, shares are the time to get them is now. And that is going to go way, way up in a few weeks, and people are going to look back before Big Payday and say, "Oh crap, I didn't really understand that. I should have." Oh yeah. So if you're in now, awesome. If you're not, get in more.
I think and it's just you're going to have more and more of the hindsight's 2020 and regret. I mean, we already have regrets. I've got regrets that I didn't fill my bags more when the price was even lower back in January, back in December. And I mean, I'm glad I got in when I did. But, you're right, Chaotic. This is all pre-show, really. Because after Big Payday, and getting back on the shares, look at 100 trillion shares today. 100 trillion shares in January, February, even, for the first 6 months of the project, you could get for almost anybody could just come in with maybe $300 or $400 worth of Hex. And not even if you staked it for anywhere from 5 years on out, you're going to have 100 trillion, even maybe 3 years. Now, to stick at 100 trillion shares, even before the big surge in share price, you're probably looking about $7-8 grand staked out for at least 3 years, maybe 4 years. So, you have to think about how that's going to play out after the share price starts going, uh, you know, exponential on us. And 5 years from now, what's it going to cost for 100 trillion? I would assert most people probably won't be able to afford 100 trillion shares. And those that are thinking short term, that they're just going to unstake, loop around, game the system, are going to be sorely disappointed, because even after big payday, if you're trying to flip HEX and you think you're going to play some kind of game and stack a bigger bag, you just can't do it, even without staking. I think, with Uniswap and the slippage, depending on how big of a purchase you're making, uh, trying to game the system is just going to work against you long term. You're going to make a bad call. Look at March this year with the stock market. Let's take a quick peek at that. We had that big crash down after COVID broke out. You had Bill Ackman. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's a big billionaire investor. Comes on CNBC, says hell's coming and Dow's going to zero. Of course, it wasn't really going to happen, but everybody did a big fire sale, ran out of stocks. He throws 200 million in the market, and they were grilling him about a month ago on CNBC with that. That's haunting him still today, because he made a ton of money on the way up, but people panic, sell, and then they get short-sighted. So this is where people have like that herd mentality. Most people are followers, not leaders. So when one guy runs to the cliff and jumps off, then a lot of people will just blindly follow. But then others will slow down and say, "Hey, wait a minute, does this make sense?" And in crypto, I think you really owe it to yourself to do your due diligence, set your entries and exits, which that's what I've done, and I think that's what a lot of people do with staking ladders, is with HEX. I've done this in some other videos too, using spreadsheets where it's not even so much just about price. There's so many moving parts in the game theory, factors into the project, where let's say shares were even static, but price fluctuates, you can make a ton of money. But price could be flat for years, but with the share price going up and the amount of HEX you're going to accumulate based on how many shares you've staked, pays off in spades too. And the longer really does pay better. You see it really come to fruition when more and more time goes by, and as this project gets embraced by others. Yeah, Chaotic here is saying HEX is the only coin I ever own. I'm actually afraid to sell. LOL. You know what, Chaotic? I'm actually the same way. I got in and bought a bunch of shit coins early on in 2017. I recalibrated. I didn't go in so recklessly in the last year or so, but I still got into some stuff like Kyber, Chainlink, a few others, and I wrote up a few wicks, and then they just kind of went flat. Some fizzled out, and at this point, I've dumped everything for HEX. I don't really hold anything else. I just see this one as with the most potential, and everything else, like I said, if something else takes shape, fine. I don't mind investing money in other things too, but I think HEX is the big winner, and maybe that's why it's gate kept so heavily, because you got to remember, these guys that are out promoting other coins are usually getting paid on the backside, whether they admit it or not, to promote these. And I remember Crypto Crow used to say he wouldn't. This is back in 2017. He wouldn't promote anything on his channel. He wouldn't do a review without 10 Ethereum, which was about 20 grand worth of a token at the time, of that token in his wallet before he'd even look at it. So a lot of these guys, and I'm sure Ivan's one of them, and he's always shilling his development program. It's their bread and butter to keep people interested, almost like a brokerage. They don't make money if you hold. They make money when you trade. A broker wants to come in and convince you that, hey, you need to get out of this position, you need to get out of this company. I got one that's going to run over here. This thing's the next Amazon, and that's how they make their commissions. So, that's kind of the way I see though with HEX, that it's all you. I mean, it's completely your call on what you do with a decentralized exchange without the KYC. I mean, how nice is that? And you've used centralized ones before, right, Cabana? I take it.
Oh yeah, that's
Binance and all that
where we
stuff.
all started, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I mean, look at what's happening with those today. I mean, how happy are you to not have to be locked into that mess like OKX and some of these others where, you just there's always, I mean, what was it, Mount Gox? How many people lost their ass with that? So
Yeah, I know a
yeah.
couple. Not me personally, but yeah, I know one in particular. He lost a lot.
Yeah, that was before my time in Bitcoin. It's funny in Bitcoin too. The reason I'm really excited about this space, and don't get me wrong, I'm 50, so most of my peers think I'm nuts being in crypto. They're like, "What the hell are you doing? That's reckless investing." But I try to explain it. When I used to say that about Bitcoin when it first came out, I had not as harsh as of like a Jamie Dimon or Buffett mentality about it. But my first impression was like, "Well, what the hell is this? Bits and bytes on the web. I mean, who the hell's going to
Right.
use this as money?" I'm like, yeah, whatever. And I remember hearing news about it under $1. It was like under a penny. And to think back, and I'm like, man. And then you listen to other people who kind of, just agree with you to reinforce your thinking. And you're like, oh, okay, I'm glad I didn't get into that. And then I tuned in late 2017, and there was all the news and rumbling about, um, Bitcoin, and it was ramping up, and it was, I don't know, 15K, 16K. It ramped up to 20K, and I said, oh my God, I missed the boat, and just started looking like most people. Well, Bitcoin's too expensive. Jump into something else, and then there was Ethereum and Ripple and Neo and Ontology and tons of other stuff. But, Richard made a good point today in the live stream that I didn't think about as far as the supply, because a lot of people kind of freak out that there's this 500 billion token supply, and they're like, oh my God, how's that ever going to be worth anything? But it's kind of the reverse of Bitcoin quantity. When you look at that fractional Bitcoin today, I mean, to have, let's say Hex is $1, it's still something you can transact as a whole unit versus try to get $1 of Bitcoin. I don't know, can you even do it? Do the decimals even go out that far? To get something like that? And it just, yeah, mentally, in the way we think of quantities and units, it makes perfect sense. So it gives Hex a lot of headroom um, to grow in the space.
And so much of the like just noise is out of the way in a few weeks, and we kind of know where we're at now. The supply stops coming to market. Big payday's done, and
Yeah.
you're talking about that 3.69 or less. Over time, then I think people can actually, some people who aren't in, they can start to wrap their heads around it. Shame they won't be able to, get the same, you know, shares, but at the same time, it's like maybe that's another wave of, oh, okay, well, this does seem more like a blockchain CD that,
Yep.
that I'm accustomed to, rather than what's this big payday and the price chart is awfully volatile leading into this, and some people, their heads explode, I think.
Oh, definitely. It's once it gets out there and people see it take shape. I mean, there's that old adage, nobody wants to be first, but everybody wants to be next. And that's what we're going to see with Hex. And so many people, even in crypto, haven't heard of it, or they've, another guy. He's a young guy. He's just in his early 20s. A coworker. I told him about Hex because he told me he bought Monero and he was just thinking about cryptos and he doesn't know much about it. So I told him about Hex, and this is a problem with people being lazy in their research. He Googles Hex, right away it comes up as scam.
Yep, I was
He
about to
says,
say
you
it.
know what I mean? And I told him, I said, dude, I said, you got to get past that shit. I said, that's just, I tried to explain the project, but people just, they do a quick Google search and they see it come out, whatever the first result is, and it must be fact. And like, oh, okay, well, I just don't want to hear about it. And then they start hearing about people making money. And then, you know, I come in or when other Hexicans out there are realizing their gains, that's when the masses come running. I mean, and they'll be like, oh, wait a minute, I want a piece of that pie. How do I get in now? And they're like, oh, crap, why didn't I get in? Those shares were a lot cheaper back in November, back in October, back in March.
Yep. It'll kind of be its own feedback loop where the price and success of the project and the Hexicans who are in becomes known, and that's just its own marketing there.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, picking big winners in the space. I mean, name anything that's even given Hex a run for the money this year. I don't think anything's even come close.
No, I
You know,
shared Richard's epic chart, the favorite one, where it's like, you know, Hex is here and everything else is down here.
yeah,
I try not to anymore because I'm mentally exhausted with it. But I'm in, you know, a bunch of Telegram groups, and one of them was a paid group that I've been in, and they did not take to, well, I guess they just said avoid Hex back in December, and I brought it up, and I was like, guys, I really want you to take a look at this to the admins or the analysts there, and they're like, no, we're just staying away from it, yada yada yada. So then, you know, today comes up, somebody mentioned it. I'm done, you know, trying to shill it to those guys, and somebody mentioned it, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, here's the chart, and, you know, triggering that occurs then, and
yeah.
then one of the main analysts comes on, and he's like, I really think you should, you know, this is a good article that's worth a read. And it was one of those hex scam things from December of last year, like 2019. And it's like, I'm like, dude, this is really old. So I looked up I think one of Taylor's latest articles about the ETH whales. I was like, this is much better. Andy just updated it like 2 weeks ago or a week ago.
Hmm.
And silence, of course, and then you post the price chart again, and they have nothing for it really. It's just you touched on it earlier. It's just animosity for Richard. I think it's jealousy, and you know what? If they miss out because of that and figure it out later, then it's our game.
Well, you know, it's true, and also people, and they're so short-sighted. You know, they see Richard, and it's like, you know, when you come out of a nice restaurant, somebody's getting a Ferrari pulled up into by the valet, and you know, we all do it, right? Your initial reaction is, "Oh, fucking asshole," right? You know, what is this guy? He doesn't deserve that. I mean, you see Dan Bilzerian's life. I
Oh yeah.
mean, yeah, everybody would love to be like that, but part of you is like, you know, screw you, right? You know, there's just a natural reaction for people to have animosity towards those who've achieved more. But I think people need to recalibrate and you know, I mean, envy is not necessarily a bad thing because it forces people to work on themselves and do more and be better and grow and be competitive. And you know, in Hex, you know, you can tell by the mentality of the people we have in here and the caliber of the people we have in Hex that that's the mindset. You know, we're in it to win it as a group. You know, it really is kind of a team effort when you think of it that way. I mean, we all have our bags, we all have our price points, we all have our financial objectives, but I think we see it in the community as a whole that you know, the masses move larger objects together, and you know, when it comes to price and us promoting the project, really it's just about, you know, recruiting more or appealing to more people and getting the word out. Like Richard's alluded to before too, or even he talked about today. You know, if every one of us helps you know, open people's eyes a little bit, not just to, you know, to Hex into crypto in general, and get the space accepted and branded in a fashion where it wipes off some of this scammy image that it has from the old days too. Because people even hear Bitcoin today and they say, oh, it's drugs, you know, it's money laundering,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, yeah, it's just, and it just trickles down from there. It rolls downhill to everything in crypto because they label everything the same. So yeah, you know, I think that it's really up to all of us to kind of get out, which is why I started my YouTube channel. I mean, you know, I don't have a big following or anything. I'm just getting off the ground, but I figured you know, my opinion or my vantage point, some people might be able to relate to, and also just to kind of, you know, reinforce my own decisions and listen to other people and vice versa.
And people like price and understanding it, and the shares thing is tough to understand, I think, for even intermediate investors. And I think one of the big appeals to that spreadsheet video that you did was you made it understandable, and something that's, I think, um, you know, maybe difficult to grasp in many heads. You kind of at least got through to, I'd say, at least half of people, if not more, and be like, oh,
Oh,
okay.
good.
And then you go down the list and you see the years, and then it's like, wow, okay, now I get it. Now this is why shares are important. You know what I mean? And anything that hexologist put on his FOMO jeans is always good. So
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Well, spreadsheets are great for that, to give you that visual representation of data, because with Hex it seems simple on the surface when you just try to conceptualize it as, okay, CD on the blockchain. Well, I understand what a CD is. They're not all that complex to visualize. But then you start to think about the share price and the Hex price and how these things are going to react together, and then over the time factor too. The gains can be quite significant, and you don't really see it in your head that easily until you start putting it down on paper in a chart format, like in a spreadsheet. So I'm glad that a lot of people found that helpful. I even putting it together myself found it helpful. I'm like, oh, okay, I can actually see my own shares and how maybe I even want to restake and re-strategize anything that I thought might work better before.
Yep. And I want to go back toward the Richard thing just quickly. One of the things that I've seen, I forget who did the video. It's one of those channels with the short clips, might have been Ministry. But one of my favorite clips, just because I think for me, like if I was a hater, it would just quash any doubt that I had, was Richard talking about legacy. And, basically he doesn't have to do this. He's retired. So it's not like he's doing this out of some huge, desperate, self-serving kind of thing. And I kind of wish he would, maybe he will with all these, I'm assuming he's going to do plenty of appearances within the next few weeks. But, I do like hearing that from him, because not me personally, I don't care. I think he's totally legit. He's just created just this amazing product, not project, completed, audited.
Yeah.
But for outsiders, who do the Google thing and scam and blah blah blah, and then you hear that and you're like, oh, well, this guy's in it for the long haul. He wants to get the respect of his peers. Yeah, I certainly respect that, and
Oh,
that's what I like hearing. So.
Yeah, and I mean, Richard, I followed him back. When I got wrecked in the 2017 bubble, is when I found Richard, and he was still a bit of a Bitcoin maxi at the time, and was just starting to warm up to Ethereum.
Yeah,
and he criticized a lot of stuff in the space, and what I admire him for, and he's a take charge kind of guy. What he did was he said, hey, you know what? Instead of bitching about all this stuff, I'm going to fix it.
yeah.
And Hex was not even his first idea. There was that science coin, which had a real niche market and a special use case that I didn't see that one to be quite as appealing. And when he recalibrated and came up with Hex, wasn't even named Hex at the time.
Yep.
But it was his um, way to produce something and contribute to the solution, instead of sitting on the sidelines like pretty much everybody else does and cry and whine and throw stones, and call everybody else a problem, or just complain about what crypto isn't and why it isn't where it should be. He's trying to bring it to where it needs to be, and get it the recognition it deserves. So I applaud him for that. And you're right. I mean, financially, it doesn't sound like he ever needed the money. I think this is more of him following through with the bigger picture of wanting to be known for that contribution. He has other objectives to fulfill and things to prove, like flipping Bitcoin, flipping Ethereum. I mean, those are huge win. I think for Richard, that's probably a bigger win than any financial win with this coin, because so many people have told him he can't do it. It's like Elon Musk. Everybody says you can't do this. You can't send these rockets into space. This won't work, right? NASA tells him it can't be done. And what does he do? He does it, right? So he finds ways. He doesn't just get defeated by everybody's fudding and complaining and or just basically trying to hold you down. So he stepped up and he did something. I think he wants to be recognized for that. I think he wants to contribute, and I do believe he wants to make the world, or at least do what he can to help himself and other people make the world a better place, which I do totally embrace that as well. So that's what brings me on board to Hex, on top of course, the price performance in the project. I'm not gonna lie to you. I mean, yeah, Rich is 100% right. Crypto, yeah, price go up. That's why we're all here.
Yeah, and that's what always kind of makes me laugh with these trader bros who are like, well, what does Hex do? And I was like, well, okay, well, what does your coin really do? Like, it's promising, most likely, it's promising to do something. Hex is doing what it was designed to do. It's done. It's doing it now. And guys have this, I say guys because 95% of them in crypto.
Most of crypto is.
Yeah, but it's like guys have this thing about wanting to prove themselves with their coin, and they reason doesn't factor in. It's just, I own this. I'm going all in on it, and I'm defending it. And even though maybe in the back of my mind, your project or product might make me more money, I'm going to prove to you that my coin's valid. And 2 years from now, I'm going to say that I told you to get in it and buy it. And it was like, okay, well, maybe 2 years from now, Hex is like, and you're still. So, yeah.
I mean, yeah, Hex could be looked at just like anything you would buy with as an investment or investment vehicle for the price to go up. I mean, okay, so crypto doesn't have earnings reports like the stock market, but I mean, why would you buy gold? I mean, really, why would you even buy the S&P 500? Because you want the price to go up and you want dividends. Right. I mean, I don't think anybody buys it because they really care about Apple or GE. Well, GE's kind of gone tanked, but I mean, Amazon or Disney. I mean, I don't own an iPhone, but I buy Apple stock. Why? Because I want price performance and dividends. I mean, it's really just that simple. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't feel guilty about it. Yeah. You don't hang your head in shame. Like, how could you? You mean you really don't care about, Jeff Bezos personally? No, I could give a shit. I just want him to run the company right and bring the price up. Hex, the beauty of this too is you don't have a Jeff Bezos. You don't have somebody at the helm like the GE CEO. I mean, look at GE in its heyday. It was the Fortune 500, right? It was the top tier company. It was the Apple of its day. The 800-pound gorilla, yeah. And their CEO made some bad choices, and now they're barely alive. So now they may recover, but you don't get into these with emotional and personal attachments. But I guess my point is, in Hex, it's code. You run it. There's no dev team to support. There's no middleman or somebody that even Richard, he couldn't come in and wreck the project with code that way. Which is what people seem to have a hard time conceptualizing. That they always think that Richard's pulling the strings behind the scenes, and the ball's going to drop, or the floor is going to open. We're all going to fall through, and Chico Crypto is going to be standing up there laughing at us and pointing. And I just don't see how that can happen. I mean, price fluctuations, yes, they've already happened. They happen in all cryptos. It's going to happen. Hex and Richard are the only ones up front about that, even, which has been mentioned many times. But yeah, people just seem to have. I don't know why it's so hard to get their head around. Something that's really just a simple concept, and it's all you that owns it. You don't have to worry about somebody waking up in the morning and making a bad choice about the project, and now all of a sudden it's like, oh, like GE, well, I better sell. Everybody's running to the exchange because the company's going under.
Absolutely right. Yeah, I guess there's always faces attached to certain cryptos. Like, one example is Charlie Lee, and that can be a bad thing after a while, especially if you dump on everybody's head. And I think that's just what all these haters and negative people, they've seen it before, and they're just waiting, and they want to call it, and they want to be so right, and they're tired of seeing price go up. And happy Hexicans, on social media, growing in force, and they're just waiting for that moment, and it's not coming. And it's driving them further insane.
Yeah, I mean, the losers get bitter, right? Because imagine if you took your stimulus check and you put it in energy token or Chainlink. Again, other YouTubers that promote a lot of this stuff, or numerous. Imagine if you bought yams. How are you feeling about that when you could have put that money into Hex and been up? What was they were talking about? I think the stimulus, the 1,200. If you put it into Hex at that time, what is it worth? Like 15 grand today?
Yeah, I think there was like a Twitter account too. It was really funny.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. Look at the Hex pizza, even that hexologist has on his channel.
Yeah.
But people just they want to pull you down, and that's true in a lot of things in life. We see it with human behavior in general. But yeah, when they miss the boat, they want to see the boat sink because they don't want to be left behind, and they don't want anybody else to succeed. Now, believe me, if they're on the boat, they're going to be pounding the drums and telling everybody to move, paddle forward, right? But uh, when they're standing on the shoreline, it's easy to shake their fist, and I think that's just they just got to get over it. Like I said with Hex, people just don't seem to understand. They think, oh, it used to be almost like a Satoshi, so now it's almost a penny. Well, that's it, and the market cap's so huge, no, it just can't be. This kind of goes back to my point on Apple and Amazon. Let's say Hex, and again, market cap, I agree with Richard 100%. It is a vanity metric in all financial sectors, not just even crypto. But you've got what Apple was around 2 trillion after the split, and even they were like, oh my God, how can this be? But it's still surviving, and it's just a metric, like you said. So what if Hex hits $2? I mean, then that would be what, 1 trillion market cap? Okay, and I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't really impact the price. Performance can still be fantastic because of the amount of liquidity and amount of Hex that's going to be in the pool at any given time. When you look at Hex.vision, by the way, when I look off to the side, it's just because I have my bigger monitor here and I can read that one as opposed to my laptop screen.
Mhm.
So that's why I'm bouncing around. But when you look at the shares coming out at, let's take Big Payday out of the equation. That's one event. It's the only point of convergence for all Hexicans. I mean, everybody knows what's going to happen at that point in time. After Big Payday, it's really anybody's guess. And when you see Hex.vision and all of the stakes that are coming out over the next 2 years, it's a very average amount most days. There are some peaks, just a few, but not any huge volumes like we see after Big Payday. And so everybody, I think we'll see the price probably grow more and stabilize around that time, just because so many more people are locked up, and people will be starting new lockups around then too. And this goes back to share price, like you were mentioning earlier. I mean, imagine what that's going to be. Let's say you got 1,000,000 Hex, and you can buy, I don't know, what does that get you about? Well, for shares, maybe you can get 100 trillion or 90 trillion or whatever. What's that going to get you even in a year? This time next year, how much will 1,000,000 Hex get you? Of
Right.
course, it depends on price, but how many Hex per share? It's going to be a lot more expensive. Maybe you get half as much, and then you've got to stake twice as long just to get what you were looking at this point in time. And now you're locked up that much longer too, by the way. So now if you have to stake 5 years instead of 2, well, you're not going to emergency unstake any sooner than maybe 2.5 years, maybe 2, but you're really pushing your luck, I think, with that one. Everybody knows you got to get around that 50% mark just to get your principal, if that's what you want back. And that's really kind of a, you know, a bad game to play too. Why even bother, right? If you're just going to take your principal out, then why bother staking?
Right.
That would seem kind of silly. You really got to, I think, stagger your stakes so they're realistic with your needs and your time horizon. That they pay off in increments for you, instead of just trying to hit this one big win. A
Yeah.
lot of people think that oh, I'll get $1,000,000. Okay, what's $1,000,000 today? It's a lot of money, but even at my age, that's what, 50 grand for 20 years. Now, what am I supposed to do after 70?
It could
And
buy you a lot more a long time ago.
yeah. But I mean, if it's fine to, and if you, this is what I'm talking about though, if you just think about it as like, I'm just going to cash out and run and live like some kind of playboy and have Ferraris and all this, it's going to be disappointing. You need to think about regenerative cash flow. and regenerative income, and HEX is designed with that in mind. It's the golden goose scenario. I mean, if you look at even Buffett in the S&P 500, and he's always in these moat stocks and things, he almost never would touch the nest egg. He wants the dividends and reinvest the dividends, and then when you get that built up to a point over 20, 30 years, whatever, then you can start to take, say, those dividend payments and use that as an income stream without touching your principal. And I think HEX is designed very similarly, but with better metrics than even something like the S&P.
Yep, absolutely. While we're on staking, I kind of did want to go through, I guess, now through the other side of big payday, because it's kind of, I mean, it's what, weeks. This will all be taking place now, and it seems like we've waited months and months and months, which we have for it. So taking a look at the staking chart here, and like you were saying, we have this huge swell of stakes right after big payday. Obviously, this is big payday. And right before, there's not a lot. Now, as we're leading up to it, this is, by the way, if you can't see it out there, it's right now up until about the end of January of next year, looks like. But so not much action. I mean, there's some stakes coming due in the next, next weekend, or this weekend, actually. So not much happening right before big payday, but I brought this up, I think, on Discourse and maybe another video I recently did. But I think a popular misconception is that the launch phase runs straight into big payday, which it does not. The launch phase is going to end before big payday, earlier in that week, and then the supply gets, it stops from hitting the market. That's a 500 million shares a day. That just stops. The buying pressure and the adoption amplifier ends, and that's when the fun starts, in my opinion. I mean, real fun. I mean, obviously we can have some price movement before then, but that is the first major thing that I'm curious about. How about you?
100%. Yeah, you nailed it with that. I mean, and that's where I really believe HEX begins. I think this launch phase, it is the pre-show, and big payday. Like I said, to me, it's almost a distraction. And I mean, I love big payday. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad to have it, but I don't think anybody got into HEX just for big payday. It was a nice thing to have in HEX. There may be some people that tried to get in now. I think it's a very small minority that might try to jump in and just play it.
A major fear, just because of those few giant wicks there on the chart after big payday. Is, I think that's where people are thinking, okay, all these people, I forget how many, but I think it's like 5 billion shares maybe, or HEX.
Yeah, there's about 5 billion. Yeah.
And I'd say the next, I think I did the calculation earlier, is about the following 4 days. So through that weekend, of around 5 billion. That's just currently. I mean, people can stake, from now until then as well. But that's what, $40 million worth, and I don't even think that counts for big payday. So there's a lot of money at play here.
Yep.
And the fear is, oh well, all these people right here that we're seeing on these huge, red candles on the staking chart, they're all going to dump. But what if they don't?
Well, I'm sure some of them will hold and restake. What I would expect is you're going to have, and I think everybody just needs to kind of brace themselves for that. That there's definitely going to be a percentage that's just going to dump at any cost.
Yes,
they aren't going to care about slippage. They're just going to do a huge market sell because they got 10 million HEX and it's worth, I don't know, 80 grand, 100 grand, whatever. And that's a lot of money to most people, right? Even with the slippage, let's say they walk away with 60, that's still a lot of money.
Yep.
But that's short-sighted behavior. That's that's just going to happen this one time. We'll see that kind of aggregate over maybe the following month, I would say. Because some people will just hold their bag. They'll be like, well, I'll let people buy it up and then I'll dump mine. So there'll be some of that. But once those folks are out, many of them are going to want to get back in because they'll see HEX survive. They'll see the liquidity pool is not rug pooled. What are you saying? Do you think people will be able to sell in BPD? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I don't see why not.
Want to?
I wouldn't want to. No, I mean, I can tell you, I have a little bit of liquid hex coming out around then. I don't intend to sell it, so whatever my portion is of that, people don't have to worry. But I get it. I mean, it doesn't take even half of that to try to sell, uh, to wick the price down. But here's the thing. So for us that understand, I mean, let's ask this question: of all of us in Hex, we see on Hex.live sometimes these big whales with 100 million, 50 million, 75 million Hex. How many of us would like to have that much?
Yep.
Given the opportunity to buy that again, sure. So let's say it wicks to a Satoshi. All right. I don't think it's going to stay there for very long because many people would scoop that up quickly. By the way, all that Hex in the OA is not in that pool. I imagine some of this maybe is going to be part of that as well. But if the OA is really the big one, this big payday is trivial. Look at the OA. Look how much Hex is sitting in there. If there was an amount of Hex that's going to wreck the project, it's that.
Right.
And I think that would already have happened. But everybody's so fixated on this 5 billion and then the 2 billion later, which again, it's a lot of Hex amongst various people. But if there was a source that was going to dump on the project hard, the OA would be the one to be concerned about. This can be absorbed, and this is where it's important too to recruit others or to get other people involved in Hex, and maybe show this as a buying opportunity. Say, hey, look, if it wicks down, this might be the only chance you're going to get Hex that cheap again, because look at the price performance in the past. And by the way, that launch phase is over and that AA is closed and there's no more new Hex being minted that way. It's just the 3.69% inflation rate going forward.
Yep.
Yeah. But we've seen this behavior on every investment vehicle out there. I mean, again, if I go back to March, even in the stock market, look at the mass panic. People dumping companies that were solid companies just because of fear.
Yep.
So, when they see something like this.
I saw it with Bitcoin and Ethereum, talking crypto. I mean, it did not matter what it was. They would just get rid of it. Obviously altcoins went down much harder, but even the old standby, Bitcoin went down to like below 4,000.
Yeah. But my scenario is the more extreme version. Let's say let's go back to like you were maybe suggesting that people don't sell as much. That's also a possibility. A lot of this Hex, think about it, if you have it coming out liquid while the share price is going up, this is an opportune time to stake the entire bag now, and you could get more shares maybe than you even had before going into big payday, because now you've 2 or 3x your Hex bag. I'm certain that some people will realize that as well and take advantage of that opportunity.
Yeah, and I think that's the great equalizer that a lot of people, and again, the shares thing, I think a lot of people not familiar with the project don't yet grasp that. And it is kind of like a balancer to those in the project. And no, you kind of feel more at peace mentally knowing that, oh, well, that share price is going to go way up. And that's the other half of big payday. Yeah, all this supply and inflation is going to get paid out that day, but the share, you're never going to get that share price, ever again.
True. And then also the FUD around the AA and this ETH, which I never could understand. I mean, I remember watching, I don't know if you guys watch Cryptos R Us. I used to watch him, George, on there. He's a smart guy. I mean, he's been in crypto for a while, but when Hex came out, he was another one. Very bitter, very didn't want to hear a word about it. Richard's a scammer. And somebody said, they asked in the chat, are you going to claim your Bitcoin? Because he's always talking about his Bitcoin, and get your free Hex, why not? And his response was, why do I want a free bag of shit? Like, well, okay, that's a bit short-sighted. Now, I'm sure he's regretting that move. He may have went and claimed it anyway. I'd say he probably did. He just, didn't want to admit it. But, if he didn't, of course, he would be regretting that move because that's free money. And now we're this close to the end, but that's just but again, one thing he said too, that, and this is why I kind of just stopped watching his channel, is after the ETH moved from the origin address, he came online that morning and he was almost
the same amounts.
Huh?
in all the same quantities.
Yeah, yeah. He comes on and he's almost giddy about it, but sympathetic at the same time. He goes, "Oh my God! See, I told you he's a scammer. You guys all got robbed. I feel bad for you. I just hope you didn't lose a lot of money." I'm like, dude, you are an idiot. I'm like, this is just a transaction. I'm like, it's like going to McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts. Here's $1.50.
Yeah.
Thanks, you give me the donut. Transaction complete. I don't care what they do with the money. Maybe they go put it in the bank. Maybe they go spend it at a strip club. I could care less. It's
Yeah.
not my business. Now, I would have got scammed if I went in the AA and I was supposed to get 100,000 hex for my ETH and I get 20,000 or 50,000, or I don't get anything.
Mm.
But this project would be dead by now if that was the case. But it's not. I mean, it functions well. I don't get why people are so freaked out and concerned about the ETH, but that's going to go away. So that argument's going to be null and void. Which I know many of us that have been at Hex for a while are kind of anxious for that too, because a lot of the flack that we get against this project revolves around the AA and the ETH and that kind of thing. So yeah, we could rest easier with that, and then the big payday will come and go, and the project will really start to take off. The ship will be leaving the port by then.
Yep. Johnny brings up a good point here that I think some still don't understand, is that the big payday bonuses don't actually occur to the end of the stake. People saying that they're got a 10-year for bigger bonus. If they emergency end stake, they don't get that BPD. It goes to the stakes that honor the terms.
Yeah, and as many times as people have been told how this operates, we're going to see a flurry of folks that just get blindsided. They're gonna run out and complain.
Yep.
And say something was scammy when it wasn't. It's just they didn't understand. It's the same thing we see with people. They start a 15-year stake and they nuke themselves, or they send ETH or hex to the origin address or ETH or whatever. They don't pay attention, and they just do things blindly. Which is, when it's your money, I don't know why you wouldn't do your due diligence and try to make sure that. I mean, I always double, triple check stuff because there's points of no return in crypto. You got to be careful when you're doing things, which they don't give your private keys away, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I do think that we will see. Those of us that are staked too. You think about this over the next few years. Think in the next 5 years, what are the emergency unstake penalties going to be? Just in the next year, it's going to be significant, I'm sure. And right after big payday, there's a lot of people that are going to try to game the system and get wrecked on that too. That's their own fault. They're just the only ones to blame for that. Just go look in the mirror.
Yep, I agree with that. Yeah, and it's Litecoin Moses and I have gone back and forth with penalties going into big payday, and I think he's in like 10 billion or more. I still think we could hit 3 to 5 billion just with all the shuffling around. I'm not too certain of that, but I think we can get there. And just since that last whale emergency instaked all those all that hex, it's like another 50 million's been added, so we're like at $1 billion 50 million or something like that.
That's true. And wait to see also how many people are going to miss big payday because they're going to stake too late. And I know Richard's mentioned numerous times how the system works, but you're going to have a lot of people trying to run in on the last day, staking before big payday and not get it, because it's going to roll over and they're not going to have an open stake on the 19th. So we're going to have a lot of that too, which is fine. I mean, it all depends on what their motives are with trying to do that. But yeah, I think the whole big payday craze, it's going to come and go, and in a few months, the price will find its way. And with the smaller liquidity, or I should say the smaller amount of liquid hex that will eventually be on the market. Because let's look at this too. Let's say you got a guy with 100 million hex. That's probably about. I don't think there's a lot of people who even have that much. I mean, we're talking in the dozens, if that much. And somebody wants to just do a big market dump on 100 million. Okay, they can do that. They can run. They're going to get a lot of slippage doing that. But then they can't do that twice. Unless they want to come back and buy another 100 million, which is going to cost them even more money. And and they may run back to the project with the money they take. They might go get wrecked elsewhere. How many times have we seen this too? By the way, people will cash out a hex bag, go buy some other shit coin or something, get wrecked on that, then come running back and want to jump back into something that is working. So we're going to see people make all kinds of weird moves that way.
Yeah, we had a comment earlier that I brought up there, but it asked us to comment a little bit more about the launch phase ending before big payday. So, point I was making was launch phase. I forget how many days we're out now, but if you count those days, it's the early in that week before big payday. It might be that Monday. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, that's when the $500 million hex.
That's the AA closing you're talking about, right?
Yeah, the end of the launch phase. Yep. Yeah. There's no more buying pressure absorbed by the AA. So there's going to be limited ways to get it, and that's going to be like the last great, I think, jockeying for position, because I think it's going to be a lot of realization there to where it's like, oh crap. Some people will be like, I thought the AA was going to go on, if they're not keeping up with their calendar or Hex, info.io or any of those countdowns, and they're just banking on, oh, well, I have until Wednesday or Thursday to get in the AA, and they're not comfortable with Uniswap, or, they don't have that set up, or they're kind of like a novice, and they're going to be, a little panicked there. And
oh yeah,
that's just one factor of it.
No, you're right, and people are naturally procrastinators. I'm guilty of myself in a lot of ways. So, unfortunately, not with Hex, but you're going to have people that they're gonna wait till the last minute, and then they're going to be short sighted. There's a good point you bring up about the AA closing earlier than big payday, because that might make it bring a huge run up in Uniswap. That might trigger a lot of buy pressure in Uniswap, because if that's the only place you can really go and get any decent quantity of hex, then that's going to put a lot of buy pressure on people, because they won't have any choice. I mean, their options are going to be very limited.
Yeah, I mean, your bed is half made at that point, and your options are limited, and that's where the real excitement starts for me. I think it's that Monday and Tuesday. Really, the whole process, I'm viewing it as that Monday, or whatever day time that launch phase ticks over. From that point through big payday, and I'd say into that next week, say the holiday, Thanksgiving, then I think we finally have kind of like a better idea of where we stand. Like the huge wave, hopefully, is has crashed, if you will, or I don't want to use that word, but you know what I mean. Like,
no, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, come through, and then I think that's the most volatile, I would think, that we could ever see with Hex price. And then, as you were saying earlier, the product, starts kind of officially in our minds.
Yeah, the way I see it there too. Plus, a lot of these people, again, with trying to run the big payday bonuses, if they're planning to dump, this project hasn't been open long enough to where you're going to not pay capital gains. I mean, you're not going to have that year timeline elapse. So people will get hit with this huge tax bill too. I don't think they realize what they might be doing to their own situation with that. So, the big part of this game is to stake and have your stakes come out maybe incrementally, so you can realize your interest, and maybe if you need to sell some principal, it depends on the hex price at that time. Let's say like a year from now, after we weather the storm here with big payday, I'm thinking more about a year out from there. I mean, I'd like to say I'll just tune out and not watch big payday, but I can't do that. I mean, I'm going to be, but I refresh the staker app like 50 times a day already. So, I'll just be too curious to see how it goes. But the way I would try to keep the mentality stable is you just you go in with your price points. Bought Hex at this price, and I have a stake for a year or whatever, and I'll exit at this other price point. And maybe that's 10 cents, maybe it's a penny, maybe it's, whatever, maybe $1. Um, I don't know. But whatever works for you and your needs. Um, Good accounting is a great tool for delaying tax. Yeah, I guess because you don't mint your coins then, right? That just takes you out of the contract. So, but people will need, a lot of these people that take, I mean, I'm babbling on, but let me go back to point on the 100 million bag.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody like that might have enough money where, okay, even if they get out with say 600 grand, 700,000, that's life-changing wealth for a lot of people. And to my point earlier, it's not necessarily, living like Dan Bilzerian money the rest of your life, but it is a game changer for a lot of folks. So it depends what those guys would do with it. But even after a big payday, most people aren't going to have that kind of ability to, submit that sell pressure to the system. And even if they do, to sell it all with the slippage, even Richard said, sell in small increments.
Mm-hmm.
To sit here and dump and just panic and run and say, I'll just take what I can get is very foolish, and you'd likely regret that move. Once you see HEX survive too, because HEX will go on. Not everybody's going to sell. That's the other point to make. I think the odds of everybody selling is just as well as everybody staking. I mean, you aren't going to have it that extreme on either end. Some people are going to restake, some people are going to sell, and then, like you said, once the tide goes out and things level off, HEX will find its price point. It's very interesting to see, though, because the shares, like you're talking about earlier, that's the big game changer. To get those shares, the only way you're going to get a lot more shares, say 100 trillion shares, is to what? Buy more HEX.
Mm-hmm.
That's no other way to get it. So there's that million HEX. Now maybe you need 2 million HEX, and that might not even be affordable for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, the cheapest price you'll have is the day before, and
Mm-hmm.
so on and so on and so on.
And then talk about price go up. I mean, with the smaller liquidity pool, which I know people kind of panic about that too. They'd feel better if it was 4 billion. But, the smaller liquidity pool, like Richard said in his live stream today, you aren't going to move the price with a huge liquidity pool. It will help you on the slippage, true. You won't see it wick down as hard, like on a big sell such as this. But how much economic energy do you need to move that pool up? Pretty significant, more than you'd probably like to realize. So now we can have a much smaller uh, amount of economic energy to move the price. And unfortunately, it makes the wicks down just a little bit harder to bear at times because they go fast.
Mm-hmm.
I think once you get used to it, though, I really don't get triggered by that, or I don't get reactive to that like I used to anymore. I don't know about you guys, but I've seen enough wicks up and down in crypto in general, where I'm really desensitized to it. And with HEX, I expect it. And the big payday, like I said too, it's just our one point of convergence. There's no other time in HEX where everybody converges at one point.
Yep.
It's all over the map and for all different reasons. And a lot of these stakes that we see averaged out are going to emergency unstake to maybe price. You got a million HEX. Let's think about this too. And this is where emergency unstakes are going to pay a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
down the road. If you got a million HEX right now, that's 7, 8 grand, 10 grand, whatever maybe it is. And but when the price goes up to say even 10 cents, right? Now you're talking about what, 100 grand, and then you get and then 25 cents, 250,000. Some people might, if say it hits 50 cents, and I don't think that's an unrealistic price point at all down the road. You might have a 5-year stake, and say in 2 years, 2.5 years, if you're at that 50-cent mark, and you have enough coming out, like you'll say, all right, you know what, I'll forfeit everything else that I'm going to get out of this, holding for the next 2.5 years to the pool, and I'll just take my principal and maybe a little bit of interest out and sell it because I need, it's going to impact my life in a way, buy a house or maybe lost your job or just you need the money, whatever. You're definitely going to see people do that, but then we all benefit from somebody not committing or not fulfilling their commitment, which I find one of the things really appealing. It's like those massive multiplayer online role-playing games like World of Warcraft and others where it's a team effort, it's a group mentality, and when there's something that benefits the group, everybody gets a portion. And in this case, somebody emergency unstaking, and we're all in the same boat. We're, those penalties, instead of just say the bank getting all the money, and then we just get nothing, we at least get half of those spread evenly. And this is where your shares can come in and be quite powerful. Because how many people are going to hold 100 trillion shares in 5 years? I bet not many. I bet a lot of the ones we see today are going to emergency unstake and take profits and try to come back, and maybe they'll have 10 trillion or 1 trillion or less.
Yeah, and that's a wild card, is what you brought up there, is the price. And it's the shares are the key after big payday, but that price is going to, I mean, greed is a powerful emotion, and that if that price spikes up, and people might see, especially the, say a bigger super shark or something like that might see gains of a lifetime for a huge stake, and they're fine with, letting a lot of that interest go, just because it's like, oh, well, I got what I wanted, and I never thought that I could get this amount. This is thinking in their head. So screw that, other chunk of my hex. I'm just gonna, EES it and ride off into the sunset. Well, good for him, but good for everybody else of the staking class, because, multiply that by who knows how many people. And I'm not saying, guys in that size or super sharks or whatever, but over months and years, that will add up, especially those long stakes, even 5-7 years. There's so many penalties, I think, that could, be at play there.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You're right. One guy here, let me just say, this guy Cookie Boy says, Big Pep, stop worshiping Dan Bilzerian. He's broke. You're being lied to. I don't worship Dan Bilzerian. He's just the current, role model, or I shouldn't even say role model, but just an example of somebody who's got that Playboy lifestyle that a lot of people envy. No, I mean, I was in my day could worship, say, Hugh Hefner, right? It doesn't matter. I don't really care about all that. And I'm too old to try to live that kind of lifestyle anyway. I'm just saying that a lot of younger people especially look up to him, or people like that. Or, I mean, just go on Facebook, right? You see people on Instagram, everybody's got the highlight reel and wants to look like that. So money can can trigger a lot of people. Yeah, I know he's losing his ass on Ignite and all of his games. I really don't follow the guy that closely. I hear news blurbs, but
I think
I'm really indifferent. But
without knowing, I guess more people do than I do. But I think he just did that whole Ignite thing as a tax thing, because he can fly to events and have parties under the name Ignite and write so much of that stuff off.
And he's a trust fund baby, and his dad was a corporator. I actually didn't even ever know of the guy till Richard had mentioned him in one of his live streams back in 2017. He used him as an example of the Playboy lifestyle. So anyway, I mean, just to respond to that, but no. But yeah, I mean, for me, I'm looking more for, and again, we're all have different perspectives and priorities. But for me, I'd be happy just to have something going into retirement and a stable income and a solid nest egg, because I've seen how if it sneaks up on you, and for all of us, and this is the kind of project that could potentially generate some nice revenue for you down the road.
Yep, absolutely. So we touched on the days leading up to big payday, the end of the launch phase. And I know this is a total shot in the dark, but it's fun to speculate, and I've seen it on plenty of other streams. But you have just a wild guess for, say, that the day before, the day of, and even the day or two after, a range of price in USD that you think we could possibly see in for big payday, in and around that.
Man, my estimate up to this point's been around 3 cents. I could be way off the mark, but the way I see the price incrementing up now, with those little bit higher highs, I mean, we've I think gotten really close to a penny the other day, didn't we? Weren't we at like 0.9, something like that? I mean, we didn't get quite to there. and we keep pulling back a little bit, but we're incrementing up and ratcheting up. I think the big run up will be within that week, maybe even within a few days before big payday.
Kinetic fantasy bull here. $7, yeah, okay, bro.
$7, hey, I'll take it. I'm not going to complain. But yeah, no, I mean, I think 3 cents. I'm a fairly conservative guy when it comes to the estimates there. It could run up a bit higher. I think the cap, in my mind, would be maybe around 10 cents, and that's only because a lot of people are going to hold through big payday because the bonus is so close. They aren't going to unstake and dump when they could, 2 or 3x their bag within the week. That'd be my guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's so tough, and there's so many elements at play, and I just I'm trying to put a figure in my head. Do you have a low range?
A low range for big payday?
Yeah, like
I don't.
wick down to.
I'm trying to think of a reason everybody would sell around them. But I mean, I don't think we're going to go much lower than we are now.
Oh, really? Okay.
No, I don't see that. We were hovering around half a penny for months. So to get, I mean, unless people just lost interest and nobody cared about big payday anymore, everybody just kind of cut and run and said, you know what, I'll just take what I can get. I'm not going to buy any more HEX, and nobody else is interested in the project. Maybe it just stays flat. But because of the big payday being so close, I'm hard pressed to believe people are going to give up that free money so easily. They'd have to have a really good reason. Only if maybe, okay, if you bought HEX, let's say, way back in the launch, maybe if you've got a 5 million HEX bag and it runs up to 10 cents before big payday and you're staked, but you've done maybe 80, 90% of your stake. If you're worried about people trying to front run you after big payday to the exchange, then maybe you'll try to get ahead of them and unstake, dump your HEX to take your profit. There is that possibility, but that's going to vary widely between people. I think for the most part, greed's going to set in even with those folks, and they're going to still want. I mean, why would, if you had 5 million staked coming out after big payday with 15 million? I mean, and you're going to not wait a week? I don't know. There'd have to be a hell of a motivation to dump at that point. So I think the price will actually probably run up fairly fast that last week, or fairly steady. And then, of course, like I said, I hate to sound like I'm pessimistic on it, but I do anticipate some rather strong wicks down. I just don't see how you can have that much liquid HEX and not have a good bit of sell pressure for a short period of time, at least.
Yeah, I agree with that. Those are all the wild cards that we've been talking about. So that's why it's so tough to predict. Nobody knows. I mean, we're just doing our own personal speculation. I think like 7/10 of a penny, kind of like that old high before we recently busted through it. I think that might be a place where some support could be found on the way down, which isn't too far from here. I think it's 1500s or something like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're saying we're hanging probably around here ish. I mean, I'm not too far off from that. My fantasy was originally probably like 2 to 4 cents, but there's so much at play, and after I found out the days, which was, I don't know, maybe a few weeks ago, and actually read the dates, and it's like, okay, well, launch phase ends here, and then we have this gap. Well, who's going to sell in that gap? I can't imagine that. The hype will be more real than it ever has been. And then what happens? What do whales do? Is there OA stuff happening? It's so many factors at play. I think Fantasyland, we could wick up towards your 10-cent mark. I'll go with like 8.5 or something. But again, this is all speculation, guys. But it is fun.
It is fun. Yeah, it is all speculation. It's really a wild card. I guess one thing that's uncertain is how much money is available, and basically how much is sitting on the sidelines that people are waiting to get in. Maybe they're waiting for a wick down, and how much is going to come in late in the game. Maybe the people that have been observing the project from the sidelines and now want to get in. There might be a little bit of a mad rush there, or maybe nobody shows up. Maybe it just stays right where it is and rolls in the big payday at this price. But I just don't see a lot of sell pressure going in just because of that fact that you're so close to 2 or 3x in your bag. Even if the price went down, but you have 2 or 3 times the quantity, you could still hold. You could still just hold it liquid and try to maybe sell it at a later date or finally stake half or whatever you want to do. Stylist says, you guys think people will gamble the price action and not lock over BPD to try to take advantage? Yeah, I do think some of that, because I think people options are power and everything. And when you have liquid hex, you have options. When you have staked hex, you've surrendered some of those options. I mean, you have the option of emergency unstake, but if it's a long stake, you have the option to nuke yourself. Go ahead, but you really don't have any liquidity options or sell options at that point. Which is why I do believe much of the hex coming out is for that reason. There's just a lot of uncertainty. People want to see the price points and make a decision on which direction they go with the bag.
Yep. Alex K brings up some people could sell right now before to have funds to buy back after for much cheaper from those wicks, not caring about share price. Yeah, I think that's referring to those trader bros that don't really understand hex. Maybe Mr. High Altitude Man and those other crypto YouTubers who just look at the chart and it pops up on their scans, and it's like, oh, this is a really great chart, and maybe some of them won't even know about the big payday event. They're just going to trade off price and probably get wrecked.
Almost certainly.
If you're not familiar with what's going to happen in that little time frame, I'm sorry, or maybe I'm not, but
No, you're right. I mean, it's true. And people that are going to the only people that are really going to dump hex, and by that I mean just sell their bag at any cost and run, are those that think the project's going to fail, or they don't understand staking and they just want to make up a quick buck, and they think they're going to game the system and take off and never come back. And of course those people do exist, but any of us that understand shares, there's no, I mean, to go and to unstake then or to end a stake then and then try to get back in the pool is very counterproductive. You're gonna just game the system against yourself, because again, those shares, you might have to go to the exchange and buy more hex if you want that 100 trillion or 200 trillion shares, which many people do. Once you understand the power of them, the shares sound simple on the surface, and they are conceptually when it comes to, okay, percentage of the pool, and I get this much hex. But when you factor in the price of the shares and the price of hex and how things increment over the time, share price is always going to go up. That's a given. We don't know by what rate, because that always depends on people opening and closing stakes, but it's never going to be cheaper than it was yesterday. But price can go all over the map. That could go down to a Satoshi, it could go to $1. And that's going to factor into people's decisions a lot too. So it's really tough to predict that type of behavior when it comes to the big payday payouts and the liquid hex.
Yep. Having a fun time in chat here, because there's a lot of our guys are talking about, and this would be good for us to comment on, the percentage staked by big payday. I'm seeing ranges in the chat. Guys are saying 9%, some are 13%. I've seen as high as staking percentage of 20%. What are your thoughts on that?
What are we now, about 13%?
I think we're below, a little bit low. Yeah.
A little below 13. There's no doubts. I mean, the only way to get big payday is to stake. So anybody trying to enter in now for that reason, of course, is going to stake. So I could see it pushing up maybe 15, 20. Well, if we got to 20%, only two ways I see that is we get a lot of newcomers in that start buying up hex, or existing Hexicans buying up hex and staking, which is good for price, or the OA goes in and stakes a portion of its bag, which I think is highly unlikely. So we're probably going to hover right around the 15%. I think we might get to around 15%. I think anything beyond that, we'll probably see a good price wick up if we get beyond 15%, just because of the amount of hex that'll need to be bought and consumed to be staked. unless they're just sitting on liquid bags now. But I don't think that many people are.
Yeah.
I think most of the liquid HEX that's there now is the OA. And there's a percentage that is, held in random wallets, but I'd say of that unstaked HEX, bulk of that's probably the OA. I don't know the exact numbers, but that would be my assertion.
Yeah, just a comment from Abracadabra here on the very short-term time frame chart, but flagging out a little bit.
Yeah, well, see, that's kind of what I'm alluding to earlier as well. We had that little wick down, started right around Richard's stream today, and then we're already seeing a little price wick up. But this is going to be, I think, getting more and more common from here on out into big payday. And then, like I said, after that, we'll see it. We'll see a lot of volatility as well. But after all of that sell-off or consumption has leveled, if people are staking, then there's no price action to be had with those folks unless they emergency unstake, which most won't if they're out any significant amount of time. As far as those with liquid HEX, if you're going to try to day trade this thing, I mean, well, good luck with that. But the problem there is that you're gonna wind up making a couple good choices, and then you're gonna lose money, and you're gonna start to think about, well, geez, why don't I just stake it, and then I don't have to worry about it anymore. I'll come back in a year and see where it's at. Mystery says, think the OA will stake a good portion. I just don't see the benefit of liquid HEX being liquid unless it goes to the Uniswap liquidity pool along with the ETH received in the AA. I don't, that's anybody's guess. I mean, I hope
many factors at play here.
Yeah. I mean, the OA to stake a lot of the HEX would pretty much kill the big payday for us. I mean, it maybe wouldn't destroy it entirely, but it would really reduce our payout. So I don't know about that. That would upset a lot of people in the project. I think that's the big paydays anticipated by the liquidity provider. I think the OA, maybe it's just for them holding the liquid HEX as options. I don't know what their motives are at this point with that. It's anybody's guess.
Gotcha. There's just some more chat about the BPD bonus. Cookie Boys, I see your comment in there. And that's my last point on my list here I wanted to chat about, so I'll get to that shortly. What else we got in here? Yeah, you're talking about my final point there, man. Absolutely. So yeah, let's get into that. And this is the last point I want to talk about on my list. So we've made it through launch phase, got that window. Most likely, I would think some buying pressure up until big payday, just because the buying pressure from AA is gone. The supply is pretty much set until big payday. Then we have our big payday happen, and who knows what volatility. So we made it through big payday. The tide's going back out, and this is something that I've heard brought up in pretty much everywhere over the past few days. I think Discourse spoke about it. I've seen it in Telegram before that, I think, and that's about exchanges. And if HEX does go on exchanges, well, they need supply to list it. And currently, it's listed, on very, smaller exchanges. But if, say, like a Coinbase or a Binance wants to list it, they're going to need a lot of it. So I think that's another fantasy land kind of thing right there, because, what are they going to do? Like, walk up to Mr. and Mrs. OA, whoever that may be, and say, please, can we buy billions of HEX? Because they want to list it. I mean, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I think that might be the intention for the OA holding that large amount, because we really aren't. I mean, other than Uniswap, there was Bidesk. I know there's some other exchanges, but they're all kind of like these little nickel and dime ones. Even Bidesk was. So one of some of the bigger players accept HEX, and I think that even if they're reluctant to, there's a good chance they're going to be forced to. Maybe it won't be Binance. Well, I mean, Binance in the U.S. isn't what it used to be anyway. Most of us can't use it. but you've got
There
KuCoin and you've
is
got some others.
Binance.us.
Yeah, the .us, but in Florida, I don't think we can. I don't know if we can use it yet, or there's a very limited number of tokens to buy. It used to be everything you went to was Binance, back in 2017, and now actually since I've been in this, I just mostly use the Uniswap. I like to decentralize. There's Kyber. I would like to see Kyber and some of those others listing as well. They might come around first, but and for them, they have to consider the revenue generated and the popularity they would gain by listing something like Hex. So they just need to get over their animosity about the project. And with the AA closing and stuff, some exchanges might start to warm up to it. I think we're a long ways out for something of the magnitude of Coinbase, or even Binance for that matter. But those days may come.
I mean, it could be kind of like the Bitcoin situation. I don't want to sound, too far in fantasy land, but Bitcoin recently with, say, MicroStrategy was kind of the first shoe to drop with, say a corporation adding it to its balance sheet, and you have others that are adding Bitcoin to their balance sheet, and that was kind of the balloon pop there, where Michael Saylor went in and he bought all this Bitcoin and didn't move the price, and it was like, oh well, now we have all this Bitcoin, and now all these institutions or corporate balance sheets are announcing, oh yeah, well we have lots of Bitcoin now too, and price is going up. Well, it could happen in a similar way for Hex, to where it could become, again, this is, a theory or what have you, but an exchange race. And well, if one big exchange lists Hex and that's the place to go, and then these other centralized exchanges see, oh, well, all these customers are going there because the supply is limited and they're the only place that can get it, and they ponied up first, then they're going to want it. And what could that possibly do? I mean, it's fun to think.
I think it's back to the options statement about options is power, and with the OA having that many liquid, they could be like Satoshi and just disappear and do nothing, and they just sit idle in there. But I don't think that's the intention. I think it's more for when exchanges warm up to Hex and they start to accept the trade it on their trading platform, because of the way it's designed, you would need a significant token supply. And Richard even talked in the live stream today about how he'd be excited if there's somebody that opens up a platform to short Hex, because those guys always get wrecked. So and those days will be coming. Yeah. Oh, it would be. And those days are coming. And you know what? With all the haters, okay, go ahead, short it.
Yeah.
Put your money where your mouth is, right? So once the platforms, again, once the AA closes and the liquidity stays, and they see that, okay, all of our arguments against Hex are no longer valid, and Richard's really out of the equation, and I mean, he is at this point as well. But they can't just sit there shaking their fist at this and look for the gotcha moment. They just have to start accepting it, and more and more people embrace it. We've seen the community grow, not shrink. Let's look at it this way. Most tokens, even just under a year old as we are, have already come and gone. How many have we seen rise up and die just in Hex's launch phase?
Yeah, Richard put out that thread, I guess it was last week, of all the deaths that have occurred just on, as
the bodies floating by. Yeah. I mean, it really is true. And I mean just stuff like Sushi Swap and Yams, and now he even mentioned like these NFTs and things. They're drawing a lot of attention, but when those people want to start, when they're tired of getting destroyed with these projects that are just vaporware or promise coins that are going nowhere, or abandoned projects, maybe they'll start to take interest, at least a portion of their portfolio, into Hex. And because it does, Hex, it works, and it functions accordingly, and we've got a lot of support. There's a lot of case history behind it now that we didn't have 6-7 months ago. People have made good money in Hex. There's a lot of good stories about Hex. You don't hear people running around talking about how they got wrecked on Hex.
Yeah, I mean, to get wrecked, it's kind of like the old Bitcoin story or whatever it was, to where if you had to buy some severe tops to have a loss, say just a little while ago. And in Hex, you had to have, bought, say, the top 3 days ago, 4 days ago to be down, really.
Yeah.
And, you made some
But even then, you
trades.
can even offset. Let's say you bought it if you bought it a couple days ago at the top, and let's say it wicks down tomorrow to half a penny again for whatever reason, and you can say, "Oh my God, I lost some money, I got wrecked." Well, no, you can always stake your hex. You can always average out, and earn interest over a time period and regain anything. If you think that the price is never going to recover, if you think it's just going to sit at half a penny indefinitely, which we know that's not going to happen, but there's a lot of angles to play. If you do the day trading game in anything, you're always going to wind up losing long term. It's like going to the casino. You might, if you go in and you make one big pull on the slot or put it all on red and you win, you walk out. That's the only way you're going to win. If you play a roulette, I mean, the game is designed like all of them, where time works against you, and trade and more plays mean your odds of getting destroyed are higher and higher each time. So
I think blackjack's a good example of that too. It's to where you can hang around for a while and be up and down a little bit, and you can prolong it, but eventually those odds will catch up with you.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So I guess summarize just my thoughts on it. Price, I'm expecting around a 3% price prior big payday. I'll be honest with you.
3 cent price?
About 3 cents. Yeah,
Okay.
3 cents or so, right up to big payday. And then post big payday, when the big 5 billion comes out, and the next few days where we have some large quantities of hex coming into the pool, I wouldn't be surprised to see some major wicks down. I mean, we could get down below, tenth of a penny. We could go into the thousands of a cent for a short period. Some people might just even sit like, okay, if it's going down fast, maybe wait for it to settle, see where it bottoms, and try to grab that. But this is where, if you have your price points set in mind, where you're like, okay, if it gets down to this level, I'm in, and then you pull the trigger, and okay, if it goes down a little more, so be it. But long term, expecting it to recover, which I do believe it will. We're going to surpass the price that we're at now, or even the 3 cent mark will just be in the rearview mirror. It'd be a distant memory a year or two from now. But a year from now, we might be sitting here on a live stream talking about, hex at 50 cents, and when's it going to $1? Yeah, it's possible.
And that's the thing, is in the back of my mind, and I let it creep in from time to time, say we're 10, 11 months in, 10-ish months in right now. Hex was designed to do 10,000x within 2.5 to 3 years. So almost a year's already down. So that's a year and a half left to that front end of that proposed, I won't say proposed, but target that was out there in the beginning for the design. So,
right. Well, let's say too, and even in the spreadsheets I put together, you can play with the numbers. Let's just say if it flat levels at 3 cents or even a penny. Over time, when you have the shares and you're accruing all of this hex, you still make a significant gain, even without the price fluctuation.
Yeah, and that's where that great spreadsheet that you have kicks in, because that's something for Hexicans to keep in their kind of like toolbox, if you will, and maybe even a safety blanket for some to see the math that's there. And if your hands are strong, this is what could happen. No, promises or anything of the sort, but math is math. And the math behind Hex, I try not to get too excited, because nothing in life is guaranteed, but the math behind this, if you peel back the layers that I've been able to peel back and listen to, and live streams, and listening to Richard speak, and there's so much good under the surface, and each layer you peel back, really, the design is amazing, the math is amazing, and the potential for those mad gains is, that have been mentioned before, it's real. It is real.
It is very well thought out. Yeah, it wasn't slapped together. He could have just forked another coin. He could have just slapped something half-assed, done a quick money grab, and this would have already been over, and it'd just be everybody crying. But this was more well thought out, and yeah, like I said, not to lose sight of anything either. Yeah, you're right. It's crypto. Everything is speculation. But doing our due diligence, at least in my view, this has the most potential of anything out there. I don't think I wicked out so far because of this math. Maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I think there is kind of like a I don't want to say a safety net, but in my mind, the design of it, those low prices of like a hundredth of a cent, I think, are long gone in my mind.
And that's very well. I mean, if it was to even get, and when I even suggest it, it would be a very quick dip. It wouldn't linger there for days and weeks. I mean, or even hours. I think it would probably not sit there for very long, because again, you don't need hedge fund managers to come in here and institutional investors dumping billions of dollars to move the price. Because it's a small liquidity pool, the price is going to move with a lot less energy, a lot less economic energy. So this is where those fluctuations just come in more fast and aggressive with smaller amounts of money moving in and out of there. I mean, even like I said, $1 million in an exchange is not really a lot of money. It's a lot of money to us, but in the big picture, it's really kind of peanuts when it comes to exchanges.
Yeah, and I think so Brennan on Twitter and Telegram, he puts out some interesting tidbits on dollar energy that would, I guess, net dollar amounts that it would take to move the price to a given area. And I don't want to misquote those numbers, but I mean, it's a few million to make a very high percentage rise to some pennies.
I haven't really looked at that myself, but I've heard about the same. It makes sense. Looking at the size of the pool, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's pretty much, we went through now through the end of launch phase to big payday and past big payday. Any other things you want to touch on regarding HEX before we sign off for tonight?
I guess just, we're all kind of, I think, in the same boat here when it comes to HEX. Everybody seems to have the same mindset, some and speculating about the same things, same concerns with big payday, but also the same level of excitement. My take is that with HEX, it depends on your big goals. If you're staked out for years, big payday is just going to come and go. Sit back, enjoy the show. But I wouldn't freak out over anything around there, and that's price point wise.
Yeah, and that's part of the design, is to be staked and not get wrecked by trading. It's to lock up your money, and if you do lock it up and other people do trade, you benefit from other people trading while you don't have to do anything, really.
Yeah, that's right. It enforces that kind of mindset and discipline, which is commitments are lost nowadays, right? So that type of patience and things, it was lost even 30, 40 years ago. Definitely today, everybody wants things now, yesterday. They don't want to wait for anything. So, and people just get too reactive. So I think if you've made your commitments already, then those are your commitments. Those are the choices. Stick with it. And, in the end, it'll likely work out best for you, for all of us. Right?
Yeah.
Was this chat? It's 200 crypto IQ. How many crypto can't get?
200 hex IQ, maybe. So
wow. Oh, that's good. Hex community is 200. Yeah. No,
yeah, I was going to say one last thing I wanted to touch on there that you gave me the idea about is, guys like you, me, Discourse Syndicate. It's not the majority that I see, and I mean, this is on Twitter, in our chat rooms, Telegram. It's not, 18, 19-year-olds in a basement somewhere trading, trying to, lock up quick game.
Junior business.
Right, exactly. It's not that mentality. It's a different mentality for the most part. that is in Hex, and it's that mentality that understands it, and I think brings a real strength to the product that other cryptos just don't have, because there are so many motivations or motives at play with these other projects, to where this is a finished product. We have entrepreneurs, business owners, some really smart, successful people in this thing, and they wouldn't be in Hex if they truly thought there was some scam element or rug pull coming. And that's really one of the big exciting things to me, and just another thing that makes me feel better about the project.
No, let me just kind of reiterate that here too, because you bring up a lot of good points on why I'm in Hex and why I'm actually making this the first time I've been on YouTube. Why I've even decided to get involved here is because of guys like you. When I watch Discourse Syndicate, I mean, Funding Jim, that guy is smart. He's a sharp guy. I mean, him alone reinforces my decision to get into this project. But not just him, you got guys like Kinetics with a broad range of backgrounds in insurance and stuff and finance. The Litecoin Moses, or dollar cost average. I think he changed his name too.
Whichever name that he's
his name of the week. I don't know. He's changed it like 3 or 4 times. But he's a sharp guy. A lot of the other guys that come in there, RG3, good salt of the earth guy, hexologist. Yep. I mean,
Give Me Liberty. He's good.
Liberty is another one. But people with broad, we have a broad age range too. That's the other thing. Like I said, it's not just 17. We do have some younger people, but
yeah, and that's great too. Yeah,
it is. It's good to get perspectives from all walks of life, but in all different levels of experience. But no, we've got some smart people. It's not just because of Richard. I don't think anybody's in here just because of Richard. What reinforces our decision to stay in this project and to push through and have a good attitude or high hopes for it is because of the community. And when we all collaborate and share knowledge and share insight, we discover new things for one, and we kind of help keep each other dialed in on our train of thought too with the product.
And Bob Hale, one of our favorite
T-shares.
T-shares don't care.
Don't care. Okay.
That's the game after November 19th.
That's right. Yep. That's right. Definitely.
And just circling back one last time, I think that finally a lot of that confusion will go away, slowly, but the whole shares thing will become perhaps an aha moment, for some that
absolutely
on it.
Yeah, absolutely. No question. That is the game. Big picture. That is the game.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, awesome, man. It was great having you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
I hope I didn't ramble on too much, but
no, that's totally good. I love it. You're price minded, and I wanted to get somebody like that I could just go back and forth with on a stream. And there are a few price minded guys, but there are so many little specialties for within our community. Like Coin Moses will have he can talk a bunch of different crypto and altcoins, and I love having him on for that stuff. And I just wanted a really cool price discussion before Big Payday, and I think this was perfect. And all these comments that we're getting is awesome. So thank all you guys for tuning in here, and can't wait to do this again. I definitely want to do more streams for sure before Big Payday.
Definitely.
Or Cabana Challenge, if you guys are in that, keep it going. I'll post some updates on that. I had a busy day today, but I'm still at it, still trying to improve some fitness goals. You lift, Big Pep, I can tell, right?
I do, but I've got body by COVID right now. My fat ass from when we had the lockdown. I live alone, so I just get bored, and I started drinking, going to get some comfort food.
Yep.
Yeah, and of course the gym was closed. None of those are excuses, right? But still, I'm trying to get back into it now. I do, but I'm definitely not where I need to be. But I'm working on it. I know there's a bunch of guys that do train in Hex, so I'm kind of using that to help keep me dialed in and motivated too. Get off my ass and do something.
Yeah, Richard mentions them regularly. It's like we got a fit community, we got a smart community, it's a motivated community. Like I said earlier, business owners, entrepreneurs, it's good. I also want to mention, I believe I put Big Pep's YouTube link in the description, so check that out. You'll also find in his channel that spreadsheet video that we were talking about that explains, helps explain T-shares and makes that, I think, a lot easier for some people to understand. And some of the math in there is pretty fun if you haven't checked it out yet.
Yeah, check it out, guys. They're all downloadable. And if you find something, if you want something added or enhanced, or you find a problem, just message me, let me know. And I'll be glad to look into it. Or if there's another type of video around that, like I said, just let me know. I'll be glad to put it together.
Yeah, Alex K wants to know what was the date of the video. I think it's only maybe a week old. Is that right?
Yeah, I've only been on YouTube about 2 weeks, so it couldn't be more than that.
It's really easy to find. You just go on the channel there. I think the thumbnail might have had, I forget. It was like I think it was from a movie or something. If I'm
there should be there's 3 videos with spreadsheets. What I've done is consolidated all the spreadsheets to one workbook, so that all the videos have the download link. So just go to any one of them, and it should direct you to where it is.
See if I can find it real quick.
Yeah, there's one with Charlie Sheen from Wall Street. That's probably the movie one.
That's it. Yeah, it's HEX works, the power of shares demonstrated in Excel. And actually, I'll just bring it up here for you guys to see it. That way you'll see what it is.
One thing I'll say too, for everybody messing with spreadsheets, the numbers I put in there, put in whatever makes sense for you. Some of those are just pulled out of thin air, like the HEX per day. That's just a wild guess.
Yeah.
So whatever you think is realistic.
There you go.
Yep.
Cool.
All right, guys.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. Thanks again, Big Pep.
Yeah.
And,
a lot of fun. Appreciate it.
Hope to see you again soon. And
definitely.
Maybe Discourse Syndicate will hop on there together. Maybe you'll be on Hexo's 24-hour too.
I'm going to try to. Yeah, Discourse is on the West Coast, so usually I'm checked out by the time they start. But I do intend to get on there at some point. Yeah,
I listen to it when I'm going to bed, so I'll throw some comments on there in the beginning. But yeah, I have to catch it the next day most days. So
yeah,
cool.
Very good.
All right, guys. Well, we're signing off. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We had a lot of viewers, and keep hexing on. And big payday launch phase weeks away.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Take care.
See you.